SaveRadiaDeals.com is celebrating 250 years of America with 25.0% off of everything. This includes savings on Hill City Howlers food vouchers and tickets, both general public and premium reserve. These tickets are eligible to be used at any game. The InsaneRadioDeals.com America 250 sale, 25.0% off of our entire inventory. Now until August 1st, you will not want to miss it.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app. 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, and asking your smart speaker, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and JJ Hendrickson.
What do the stadium in Seattle, I'm going to use World Cup terminology to start the fast lane because we are kind of talking about it, but it's relative to American football. What do Seattle Stadium, Dallas Stadium, Atlanta Stadium, and I will only call it New Jersey Stadium because it is located in New Jersey, not piggybacking off the name of the number one metropolitan area in America across the river. What do all those venues have in common?
Ed, I think I have a guess. They all use artificial turf. Is that what we're looking for?
Kind of. They all use artificial turf when what sport is being played on them?
The NFL football.
In college, like
college
Washington
football.
State,
Yeah,
Washington,
football.
football, American football. And they use grass when soccer is being played on them. Yes, we are using the different terms for distinctive purposes today here in the Fast Lane. George Kittle, 49ers tight end, who plays in San Francisco Stadium, although I will hat tip to the 49ers in their stadium for having the most creative cover-up so you can still tell who the sponsor is when all the camera shots showed it. I don't know if FIFA liked it, but hey, they technically abided by the rules, kind of like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when have you seen Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, by the way?
I've seen some of it. Very little.
All right. For those that are unfamiliar, Will Smith, back when he was normal, not now, Will Smith would wear his sports coat inside and out. And he would have the tie on his head because the only thing he had to do at Bel Air Academy was wear the sports coat and have a tie in a Windsor knot. It did not stipulate inside out for the sports coat or where the tie was located. So he was bending the rules, kind of like San Francisco is doing with San Francisco Stadium. Checked off the box, but maybe not the way FIFA wanted. Will Smith, back in the Fresh Prince, checked off the box of Bel Air Academy, maybe not the way that the people who apparently run that fictional school wanted. Where we're going back, though, today in the Fast Lane is this. George Kittle is the most outspoken of the people who has come out when he's been at venues, particularly at New Jersey Stadium, and twice has tweeted out things to the effect of, and we will beep it out, of course, because the first one is, grass looks great at MetLife. Can we keep it that way, NFL? Would appreciate it. Thanks. That was on July 19th. Then, a little bit later, he had a second one. Wonder if he was consuming substances. Because on Sunday, he also had, grass looks great. Let's use grass instead of turf, NFL. Please, question mark. Thank you, guys. So here's the thing. George Kittle is correct. Grass is a safer surface for American football than turf is. And I don't think the distinction is so vast that, like, here's an example. We're going to localize it. I don't think it's so vast that, like, high school should not use field turf. I think it's great to use grass everywhere you can, but in our backyard, we have plenty of high schools. EC Glass and Heritage play at City Stadium. LCA plays on field turf. Jefferson Forest Cavalier football home games are also played on turf, among other venues that I'm probably forgetting across the region. Those are the four that come to mind. Amherst is also on turf. Brookville and Liberty are on grass, along with Rustburg. I checked off all the Seminole District schools. See what I did there. In high school, it's a budgetary thing. But in the NFL, it's a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. They can afford, JJ, to have grass. The reason they're not putting grass in, I don't think it has anything to do with safety. I think it has everything to do with the fact that the owners are looking for any bargaining chip ever, and they're not going to concede things without getting a concession in return. And even if it's not in the safety of players or it's not in the best interest, the NFL, unless it's unequivocally going to kill fan interest, it's not to have grass versus turf. Guess what? It's precedent. It's not something you like, but it's one of those where you grow up, you realize doing what's morally right can sometimes get trumped by what's in the best interest of a business organization. And that's the reason why the World Cup features grass and football games feature artificial turf.
So you think this is some kind of a petty disagreement between ownership and the NFL? They want something in return if they change from turf to grass. Is that correct?
Oh, no question.
Yeah, no, that seems ridiculous because, like you were saying, it's a multi-billion-dollar injury. If grass is indeed safer, which I know there's been studies on that have shown, it's not a huge margin, but there is less injuries on grass than there is turf. I don't understand why owners wouldn't want to do that other than, like you said, being petty. I mean, maybe it'll be a little more expensive to maintain grass than turf, but you're owning an NFL franchise. You're not going to have any problem paying to maintain a field. I kind of agree with you here, Ed. I think it's ridiculous that we're not playing on all natural grass. And this World Cup has shown that it's not that hard to get natural grass into some of these stadiums.
You know, it would improve the quality of the product. Now, viewership is still going to be high as it's always been. Fans aren't going to stop watching or listening on the VTR and Sports app, your home for great play-by-play, to NFL games because more players get injured on turf versus grass. Like, I wish the NFL would do it, but I 100% think the NFL owners, and they only have to get 32 of them on the same page. But the NFL owners routinely think in terms of precedent, finances, and what makes the most sense on that particular front. Because from a quality of product standpoint, I mean, look, we saw it. Like, it's easy to sit there and point out New Jersey Stadium, the championship site for the World Cup, because it's outdoors. But look at Houston, which hosted a World Cup event, and Arizona, which did not, but I happen to have stood on the grass field when Liberty got destroyed by Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl a couple of years ago. But I do think Liberty deserved to be in that game. So when you touch on those key points, JJ, that's a part of the reason why it's possible to have domed stadiums, not to mention natural outdoor sites. And I get that more NFL teams are shifting from outdoor to dome. Washington's doing it with the Commanders. Buffalo is about to debut a dome stadium, along with Nashville for the Tennessee Titans and Cleveland in the coming years, among other venues. But unless you're Washington, when Dan Snyder may or may not have decided to cheap his way out on the grass at that field up there in Landover, Maryland, I almost said the sponsor name, caught myself. Or the Chicago Bears, who routinely have an atrocious grass surface as well and poorly maintained by the city of Chicago. Answer your jokes about Chicago politics here. The reality is it's feasible. It's just something the owners don't want. That's why, call me cynical, but I 100% believe that's the reason why they are using grass in some venues and turf in others for the NFL, but it's all grass across the board. And the reason they made the concession is they can make enough money by hosting the FIFA World Cup that the NFL owners deemed it worth their while to pivot off of grass, off of turf, and insert grass. Now, if they would just keep it, it would probably be a better thing.
Yeah, it really is ridiculous when you think about it. Like you said, viewership isn't going to tank when there's a lot of injuries on the field. I mean, you're going to watch even if your favorite team loses one of their best players, I would assume. But at the end of the day, you want the best product possible out there on the field. And just think back to the Giants last year. Let's say if they were playing on grass, let's say Malik Neighbors doesn't tear his ACL, or Aaron Rodgers 2 years ago doesn't tear his Achilles. That's gonna keep interest as high as it could possibly be in the NFL, because those who want to see those guys play are actually going to be able to watch them play because they'll be out there. So if it's just petty from the owners and it's going to result in a better product out on the field, there's no reason why we shouldn't be playing on natural grass at all 32 stadiums at this point.
I firmly think those are the type of things the NFL owners are keeping in the back of their mind, because what's the one thing that they really want?
Money.
Not just money, but what's the... All right, I should rephrase the question. My fault here in the fast lane. Let me try that again. Among priorities that the NFL owners would like to see in terms of changes to football in the coming years, what is one of the big ones for NFL owners?
Viewership? What are you looking for?
18 game schedule.
Oh, 18 games. Yeah, I got you.
And so the players would prefer not to play 18 games. The NFL owners at that point might say, well, we'll give you an extra bye week. I think that's likely to come. It's going to go from 17 games in 18 weeks to 18 games in 20 weeks in the NFL. I mean, okay, you're going to stretch the season longer. That's not going to tank viewership. Let's not get twisted here. The other thing is, all right, we'll throw you a bone. We'll make it all grass surfaces to make the game safer. And what could the NFL then spin this as? We're making the game safer. Never mind, they're adding an extra game of wear and tear onto teams, players' bodies over the course of a season, which adds up over the course of time to diminish returns and payments to NFL players.
Yeah, I mean, if they're taking that angle of making the game safer, they could use it as kind of like a PR move, like you're saying. We're doing all we can to keep the game as safe as possible, so it's not a big deal to add the extra game. You and I both know an extra game is going to result in a lot more injuries, a lot more wear and tear on those guys. It's not going to be good for the longevity of anyone's career, even if it is just one extra game a year. So I fully agree with you here, Ed. The owners just have to buck up and accept they're going to need to play on.
It's that corporate mindset that, everybody's watching for liabilities, if you will, and not wanting to pay any more out of pocket than they have to. Kind of like big insurance companies often do if you're on the wrong end of an auto accident. And the reality is they often don't want to pay out more than they have to pay, even if they should pay more. That's where it gets complicated. That's where you need a team that have been serving Virginia for
not one, not two, not three, not four,
but over 4 decades, since 1982. TrostLaw.com. Remember the website, or call 777-HURT if you have been in an auto accident and you're getting the runaround and all the rigmarole from insurance companies. Trost Law will help you navigate it, as they have been doing since 1982. When we return in the Fast Lane, we're going to do a little bit of a pivot, because we're going to catch up and talk a lot of college football around 5:30 today with Tim Murray, host of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast, as we are, I know we're still over a month away from week 0, which features the Virginia Cavaliers this year, and ... cliffhanger fulfilled when we return next in the Fast Lane.
Mark Dalton here with Terry Volkswagen. Get ready to fall head over heels for the perfect VW SUV. One size doesn't fit all, though, and that's why Volkswagen has an SUV for everyone. From the compact and affordable Volkswagen Taos to the tech-packed Tiguan and the spacious Volkswagen Atlas. No matter which one fits your lifestyle, you'll love the comfort, performance, and safety. Stop by Terry Volkswagen on Forest Road in Lynchburg, or check us out online at terryvw.com. Terry Volkswagen. You'll love our cars.
Good to great. It's one of the hardest transitions to make. 801 Raw Bar has pulled it off. Their Country Boil bags have taken the good seafood and flavors from the Bayou region and brought them to the Hill City for a great seafood dish. You can also build your own seafood plates at 801 Raw Bar, featuring fresh shrimp, crabs, scallops, and fish from the Atlantic region. Step back into the relaxing beach house vibe with different regional seafood twists at 801 Raw Bar on Church Street in downtown Lynchburg.
Hey, Hokie fans. The warm weather months are when you really need experts plugged into the Virginia Tech Hokies. You need TechSideline.com. While Tech softball and baseball light up the diamond, TechSideline.com keeps you updated while taking you deep inside the football and basketball off seasons. Get exclusive recruiting scoops, roster breakdowns, and expert analysis that keeps you ahead of the game year-round. Subscribe to TechSideline.com for $12 per month or just $120 per year to stay ahead of the game. TechSideline.com. All Hokies, all the time, period.
You walk into a repair shop, hear the price of their estimate, realize they'll take an eternity to get to you, and go, uh-oh, better get Mako. At Mako of Lynchburg, they're certified to do repairs on any type of car and for any insurance company, because they ultimately answer to you. They'll process through insurance companies or help you pay out of pocket. They don't get better prices to insurance companies than they would for you, because at Mako, it's all about being honest with you. So if your car needs collision repair or paint, go, uh-oh, better get Mako on Kemper Street in Lynchburg.
Hey Lynchburg, Liberty football coach Jamie Chadwell here. Nobody matches the passion for sports on VTRN Sports Lynchburg, 93.3 FM.
Come join the chat or give us a piece of your mind. JJ Hendrickson 27 and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
We'll get to the good news in a moment, but we start off with not so good news in...
It's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
Hadn't been a great last week or so for ESPN personalities, particularly those around the NFL. First of all, Have you followed the Matt Miller story about the NFL draft analyst?
I have not, Ed, no.
Okay, so Matt Miller, I guess we could say now, was temporarily off of ESPN. I can imagine that might be a little bit longer. Was implicated in a scheme where he, or allegedly, important to emphasize that, allegedly ran fantasy football leagues for charity, but failed to pay either charities or the winners of those particular leagues. I honestly don't think ESPN knew exactly about what was going on with Matt Miller. Now, should you? Yes. Should you be aware if a talent of yours or a member of your roster is running a league, particularly using a platform that is not ESPN's sports fantasy platforms? Absolutely. And red flag has got to be raised on that one. I mean, you know how we are here in the Fast Lane and in the Virginia Talk Radio Network. JJ, we are shamelessly self-promoting every opportunity that we get. And to have a talent that's running a fantasy football league that's not on your platform, that in and of itself should be a reason ESPN should have reached out to Matt Miller. But then you add into it the fact that he reportedly is running fantasy football leagues for charity and doesn't pay the charities or the people who are winning those leagues, whether it's cash prizes or other prizes, products, merchandise, things of that nature. It's not a good look. Now, I don't think, honestly, that Rich Eisen, whose show you can hear from noon to 3, and he's had Matt Miller on at different points to talk NFL draft, or even us, we have had him on in the Fast Lane back when TJ Wilkerson was filling in for us. You know, I honestly, I can say that for us, and I can say that for Rich Eisen. We had no idea it was this bad. Like, sometimes people do things that you just don't know what they're doing in their particular private lives or the depth to it. It is a danger, giving the benefit of the doubt. But we've been burned. It could happen before, but it's clearly not a banner week. And there are a lot of lessons that can be learned about this when it comes to these type of operations. As much as anything, I err on the side of, and I understand in radio and in media, historically, you're trying to push boundaries for audience connection and engagement. I don't dispute that to an extent, but I think you have to be very careful. And I err on the side of caution if you're not exactly certain. Meanwhile, speaking of also not good news for ESPN personalities.
Number 4.
At first, it was yesterday. Ryan Clark, ESPN's former hot take artist, that's what I'll call him, NFL analyst, was fired mid-show yesterday is when he learned of being dismissed. I think it's reasonable to criticize ESPN that you got to have a better path for communicating layoffs with your staff than firing somebody mid-show and allowing them to learn about that. And again, credit to Andrew Marchand of The Athletic. His job is not to worry about people's feelings. His job is to get those type of stories out. But there's got to be a better way for doing that. And this is somebody who is not exactly a fan of Ryan Clark's style when it comes to the hot take approach. And the fact that to me, it always seemed like he was a little lazy in terms of, you know, that's the non-player in you coming out. Okay, there isn't, to an extent, truth to the fact that non-players and people especially who just never competed in sports don't quite understand what coaches, athletes, trainers, and people that are actually invested in winning are going through. I do think there's some merit to that. But I also think it's a little bit lazy because the whole, you've never had to do my job thing. Well, when players use that against people in the media, you know, I can flip it around and say, y'all haven't had to do what we have to do. So I think you can obviously bring that out. But I do believe, I will take ESPN at their word and say, this is a layoff. When you factor in that a number of other cuts have come down today. Carl Ravitch, great for ESPN's baseball coverage, part of that. NFL insider Tom Pelissero, also frequently a fill-in and guest on the Rich Eisen Show, noon to 3 weekdays on the VTRN Sports app. Cam Newton, former NFL MVP. David Lloyd, former SportsCenter anchor, longtime stalwart there, as well as former linebacker and talk show host Bart Scott, and most notably, NFL Network analyst Charles Davis, who's done some work with Westwood One. I would imagine he'll still be part of their rotation of coverage. He's really good at analyst work. I think this was inevitable when ESPN took over operating the NFL Network. When you take the ownership stake, you take over operating it. The first thing that often happens in the corporate world when mergers unfold is a reduction in force, which is basically a code for cutting jobs so that you can get the bottom line in gear, especially when you have just expended money to acquire a particular asset.
Yeah, I mean, you never like to see talent being laid off like this. Obviously, it's just business for ESPN. I don't think they're doing it because anyone's not good at their job, purely financial from my point of view.
Meanwhile, speaking of financials,
Number 3.
Virginia Tech president and AD Brian White announced another hire today. Mary Giardina. I could be butchering her name. They'll correct us on the TechSideline.com TSL podcast when they start talking about it over the next portion of the week. But Giardina has been hired as the Deputy Athletic Director and Chief of Staff, which is basically the equivalent of a Chief Operations Officer role, where she's entitled and to oversee a lot of people in Virginia Tech's athletic department. Here are the things that we can just lay off and rattle off about her. More than 15 years of experience in college athletics administration, stints at West Virginia, Florida Atlantic, ties to Brian White there, Duke, as well as the Atlantic Coast Conference. To me, that is positive in the sense that she's been a lot of different places and probably has picked up a number of different ideas that she can use to contribute to Virginia Tech's athletic department. She's got experience as well as an associate athletic director for student athlete experience, governance, and compliance. So 3 different areas. You do need somebody with a bit of a compliance background, and nothing else in terms of navigating the legalities of a particular situation. But to me, it's apparent and obvious that Virginia Tech is acting swiftly to fill these roles, and they're also bringing people in with multifaceted backgrounds, which I think part of that with Brian White is different ideas you can bring in, which include revenue-generating ideas.
Yeah, I'm really happy with what Brian White's done thus far. He obviously trusts her, having worked with her at FAU before, and willing to bring her into this program. So I'm very excited to see what she brings. Sounds like a great hire, and versatility is always something you need in athletic.
You know, and now more than ever is the ability to fill in and mesh with multiple roles, because you're trying to move people around. And if anything, a lot of that centers on if people show they are better at revenue generation than others, then if you're in the others category, you might be able to be reassigned to a role where you still have a role in revenue generation, but you can also pick up some other duties to free up the time for people who are bringing in more money, because essentially that has to be priority number one, especially at places that are not in the SEC, the Big Ten, or if they get to a Super League, whenever that time might come, maybe sooner than later if Greg Sankey has his way. We are not getting that today. That'll come probably tomorrow in the Fast 5 at 5-ish. But inevitably, you got to find a way, because everybody's playing keep up in this day and age, which brings us into
Number 2.
we are big advocates of Week 0 football here in the Fast Lane. Content earlier, the Virginia Cavaliers are part of it this year, and the news has come down. UVA is going to be part of Week 0 next year. That game against Arkansas State, which was slated for mid-September in 2027, has been moved up to Saturday, August 28th, which will be Week 0 for the second consecutive season. All the criticism we have lobbied in the way of Carla Williams, we do tip our cap when she and her staff look at things in the correct manner. I think they're hitting the nail on the head with advocating to stay in Week 0 this year against NC State, 2 big marquee brands. Will do a larger television audience number than it normally would for 2 teams that are probably mid-pack and certainly not prominent football brands in the ACC. But grabbing it again next year, I mean, if other schools are not going to take advantage of this opportunity and Virginia sees one, go for it. I applaud them tremendously. I wish we'd see more out of Virginia Tech, out of Liberty, out of JMU in utilizing Week 0. To me, it's a no-brainer if you're looking for ways to get more fan engagement, to get more people around. And there is an economic inefficiency as well. You get that Week 0 game, you get an extra bye week, which gives you a chance to reassess, to prepare, which is big when you don't have preseason football games in college athletics.
Yeah, same page as you, Ed. Love that they're choosing to play in Week 0 here. I mean, at the end of the day, people are itching for football. It's been about 8 months since we've had it. So the earlier you get it, the more eyes you're going to have on it. Everyone just wants to watch college football at the end of the day. And UVA is going to be able to put themselves on a stage, maybe a national one, just because it's Week 0, get more fan engagement, get people eyes on the program. So very, very well done by UVA.
Meanwhile,
Number 1.
Conference USA, they have had their media days the last couple of days, and they have announced their preseason players of the year, for whatever this is worth. Nick Manicucci, the quarterback out of Delaware, Offensive Player of the Year. More on him in a moment. Defensive Player of the Year, Barrett Hobson, graduate from Kennesaw State. And Special Teams Player of the Year, because that's really important when you're talking kickers, Garrison Ripa of Jacksonville State. 3 nuggets as it relates to Liberty. Manicucci really impressed for Delaware. I know they don't have the volume of Division 1A FBS athletes as they made the transition last year to there, but they were at Liberty last year. I thought he looked really good as a thrower. I think by the end of the year, Kanye Udo, if he pops for Liberty, the former Army running back who has gone over 1,000 yards in a season previously, I think that could be a really big addition given how Liberty wants to run the football, likes to run the football, and if you trust Bill Durkin and the offensive line staff and coaches and players to get back on gear, I think Udo is the guy that by the end of the year may be the best. But I totally get Manicucci for Offensive Player of the Year. Delaware seems like a viable, trendy dark horse in that conference. Does Tim Murray agree? VSiN College Football Betting Podcast host. We'll ask him in about 5 minutes here in the Fast Lane as he'll join us around 5:30, 5:35 today. Defensive Player of the Year, Barron Hobson, big for Kennesaw State. He and they have given this offense, Chadwell's offense, and Liberty fits the last couple of years. And Garrison Ripa may just be salt in the wounds of Jacksonville State, if nothing more than the fact that Liberty, they have really had their bugaboo trying to find kickers and reliable players. But the other thing this also indicates is players who finish at these awards at the end of the year are a higher likelihood to not be players at the beginning of the year in these group of 5 or these group of 6 conferences, because oftentimes the rosters churn over so much that you're basically going with returning players for these particular preseason awards, and there can be players that transfer down or high school players or even players in a program that burst in that year and are likely to be called back up to the power programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these preseason lists are always great to look at. At the end of the day, we really don't know what these teams are going to look like yet. We don't know who's going to be out there playing a lot. And like you said, a lot of the times they just give it to returning players. So very curious to see what happens here. I do like Delaware to do pretty well this year, so I don't mind the pick. But at the end of the day, we just don't really know yet, do we? Yet?
No, we don't know much about that, but we do know you can still get 25% off every single item, including Liberty Flames season tickets. We've got season ticket packages as well as individual game tickets at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Shop 24/7 at InsaneRadioDeals.com. First come, first get. Great deals for Liberty Flames tickets. Meanwhile, pivoting off of that to the power of nostalgia as we get into the weeds.
The haters say we get into the weeds. They may even say we get into the weed.
Smoke weed every day.
Nah, we love getting into the weeds to discuss some cool sports details here in the Fast Lane.
Was North Wilkesboro a good NASCAR race? There's the nostalgia of the venue, and that deserves its own separate segment. But when you're talking the quality of the racing, I don't think it was as bad as people expected. We played the bite yesterday about Denny Hamlin and speaking with frontstretch.com and the hat tip to Joey Logano. Just sometimes a team locks in on a setup at a particular track and they can roll the way that Logano did. But I thought the first stage of the race, the first third of the race at North Wilkesboro, even the battles for the lead were pretty compelling. And I think the battles for other positions were really good afterwards. And Hamlin mentioned that if he had a chance, he would have made it even more exciting at the end of the race.
Yeah, the traffic, was the same for everyone. I had a group of Toyotas that was making it hard on him to get around, and I thought I got caught some breaks, truthfully, with some live traffic. I just think that he was a little better. And there was just nothing I was going to do short of getting close enough to bump him on the last couple laps, but I just couldn't quite get there.
Sometimes the other guy's just better. I'm a runner. I experience it far too often where you're near the front, but sometimes the other guy or gal, and they're both of those in running, that are just better. And you tip your cap when those situations arise. I think the same thing happened in this event. And Denny Hamlin mentioned it, the race being too long could be a factor, although I don't really think it was.
I don't know, maybe 400, but it was a long one. But it'll test you as a driver, and this track always has. But I don't know. I think the fans will let us know, but they typically want more racing, not less.
They want more racing. I'm actually fine with less racing, but I'd say this is one of the rare times where even though the battle for the lead wasn't great over the back half of the race at North Wilkesboro, I think the quality of the action in and of itself was good. It raced more like Richmond, which is not what you want out of a short track. I think people want more beating and banging, but I think some of that's the cars. Some of that's also drivers and understanding when to be aggressive and when not. And that all ties into this action. Meanwhile, speaking of action, if you've got action on college sports or you just like listening and figuring out what's going on, we'll get an overview. Tim Murray, VSiN College Football Betting Podcast host, previews the season next.
Big transitions feel like big hurdles. That's why Central Virginia Counseling has 2 dynamic 6-week summer groups for rising 6th and 9th graders packed with essential life skills. Each week targets a new skill for success, tools like organization, time management, task initiation, anxiety reduction techniques, and skills for making friends and communicating well. Through peer connection and expert guidance, students will gain tools to feel capable, connected, and ready for day one. Visit us on Timberlake Road or Wigington Road in Lynchburg or at centralvirginiacounseling.com to learn more.
Midday hunger hitting you hard? Swing by Macadoo's for our $8.95 weekday lunch specials. Whether you're craving a classic crunch or something fresh, we've got you covered. Chicken tender basket featuring crispy golden tenders served with fries. The Macadoo's Chef Salad, the healthy, loaded favorite that will hit the spot. Hit back against your lunchtime hunger at Macadoo's with eats that won't break the bank.
It's time to share it and fun. Just to be there, the only one. Just to be there at Macadoo's.
We'll see you at the Do's.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
Hey guys, this is Chad Hassan with ASeaofRed.com. ASeaofRed.com is the #1 trusted independent news source for Flames sports. You can get access to premium content such as the Rumor Mill by becoming an ASeaofRed.com club member for only $84 a year. If you are a diehard Liberty Flames fan and want all the inside scoop along with coverage of recruiting and all the major sporting events over at LU, visit ASeaofRed.com. Go Flames.
Come join the chat or give us a piece of your mind. JJ Hendrickson 27 and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
So we've got plenty of coverage, as you know, here in the Fast Lane from the ACC kickoff, and some of those exclusive podcast-only interviews are going to be dropping in conjunction when our shows get posted over the next couple of days at Fastlane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And why we begin a segment with that type of information is because we are continuing to turn up the heat. Not literally. It's already hot enough and humid enough and has been for the last month and a half here in Virginia. But we're doing it as the start of the college football season is getting closer. Last week, we were in Charlotte, ACC football kickoff. Our coverage presented by Black Goose Chimney Service. Believe it or not, cold winter months will be here soon. Get that chimney right. blackgoose.net to learn more. Also going on, Sunbelt Conference had their media days last week. Conference USA yesterday and today, Tuesday, July the 21st. So for all of that, we get a chance to get an overview on that. Somebody who's been doing it since basically the end of last season, Tim Murray, VSiN College Football Betting Podcast host. He also is part of VSiN Primetime and is joining us here in the Fast Lane at 1. That's the number 1. 1 Tim Murray on Twitter. Tim, glad to be chatting with you. Appreciate your time, and the juices flow. Do they flow a little more when media days get going?
It does. It starts to get a little ramped up. You get to you hear some kind of crazy things come out of these coaches' mouths from time to time, or commissioners. So yeah, I think it does get a little more juiced up. You know, we're fortunate enough to have a couple of coaches stop by our studio out here in Vegas. So it definitely does. Now that the World Cup's all wrapped up, it does feel like we're full steam ahead for football, and for me, more specifically, college football. So, you know, we're less than 6 weeks away. So it's go time right now.
Principal time here in the Fast Lane with Tim Murray, VSiN College Football Betting Podcast host at the number 1 Tim Murray on Twitter. My new selection decision has been I tread lightly on season futures and projections for group of 6 schools because of the vast amount of roster turnover, but look for long shots there or underdogs early in the season because of the roster turnover. Is that a bad or good philosophy?
I mean, I think there's always a lot of unknowns, you know, and looking at the power conferences, there's a lot of optimism and excitement for, let's say, a team like Oklahoma State. And they were able to bring in North Texas's head coach, Eric Morris, and a lot of their other pieces from a year ago, and a big season for the Mean Green Drew Messmaker being the main guy there. But I certainly am not opposed to, like you said, treading lightly. And, me personally, it's all about learning, especially if you're betting or however you're going about it. Week one for me has always kind of historically been a challenge. You maybe are a little too high on some teams, a little too low on some teams. These point spreads, you got to remember, have been out there for 3 or 4 months, so they've been maneuvered quite a bit. So definitely not opposed to it. I think there are opportunities in the G5, G6 level to potentially buy low on some teams. A team that certainly out west that has gotten a lot of pub, at least from the folks that I've talked to, is a team like Fresno State, new look Pac-12. Certainly an interesting team there, and questions at the quarterback position, which could ultimately derail them. But I think there's a lot of exciting prospects about what's on that roster. But overall, I think you're not crazy by any stretch of the imagination to tread lightly. And like I always say in gambling, to each their own. I know people who have 80 to 100 win total bets and love to pepper the board from a future standpoint. And I'm kind of more on the conservative side. I like win totals. I probably have about 8 or 9 that I accumulate over the off season, but I'm not going to go too crazy. So I think it's to each their own. And then as the season goes on, I certainly find myself kind of dabbling a little bit more and feeling a little bit more comfortable about certain positions, at least from a gambling standpoint.
The setup to all of this with Tim Murray, VSiN College Football Betting Podcast host, who is joining us in the Fast Lane as we are looking ahead to the start of the college football season, Week 0, which features the Virginia Cavaliers now this year and next year. They just announced Arkansas State. They will be a staple of Week 0. We're fans of Week 0 here in the Fast Lane. But where we go with this is, in particular, the Sun Belt Conference, who had their media days last week. I can easily see a scenario where JMU it remains a top team in the Sun Belt, but I am leery given the vast amount of roster turnover in addition to the departure of head coach Bob Chesney from last year. Mm-hmm. They reloaded, but this is the second time they're doing it. Is my caution on the Dukes warranted?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a program tried and true, whether it was in the FCS ranks, going to the FBS, and it wasn't that long ago, the guy roaming those sidelines down in Harrisonburg is now winning national titles in Bloomington, Indiana, and Kirk Cignetti. And Bob Chesney, obviously coming in from Holy Cross. I think there was some curiosity about how it would be in year one under Bob Chesney, and it was good, but was it out of this world great? No. I mean, they had a couple of hiccups, right? A 9-4 season in their first year under Coach Chesney, and then last year, obviously, we all recall what happened as they made it to the playoffs. So, look, I think they got another pretty good coach. I joke that Billy Napier is back in where he should be in the Sun Belt, but I think he will do a good job. And James Madison, when you look at that conference, is always going to be, in my opinion, one of the best programs year in and year out. And, the unique aspect of the Sun Belt that you're familiar with, and obviously your listeners are too, is they're the only conference left with true divisions. So that does make it a unique and a tricky handicap because, some folks that I've talked to are high on a team like Marshall, right? This is, year 2 under Tony Gibson. They've got some, promising things going there. Carlos Del Rio Wilson's back for another year. So having that continuity at the quarterback position. So I think there is some hope that this could be a team that maybe rises a bit, but then you look at the schedule and they have to go on the road to Harrisonburg. So am I really enthused about taking a shot on a team like Marshall? Similarly, you look at Old Dominion and you lose Colton Joseph. He goes to Wisconsin. So how is that going to be? So, yeah, I think the Sun Belt is pretty intriguing when you look at the possibilities there and who's going to emerge this year. I think for me, Marshall was the team initially that I kind of looked a little bit down the odds board as being a possibility, but I do have trepidation about that October 3rd game where they have to go on the road to Harrisonburg. If they were hosting JMU this year, I probably would be more interested in the Thundering Herd to potentially have a chance to win this conference. And then, lastly, you look at a team, Texas State just moved on to the Pac-12. So I guess that would be, I would remove that because you're looking at a quarterback at Texas State that is great. But of course they have moved on to the Pac-12.
So you mentioned ODU for a moment. They lost Colton Joseph, big piece of that offense last year. big drop-off as well for the Monarchs?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, we'll see, what that position looks like with Heinschel coming in here. But Colton Joseph is a guy that you look at week one, and we're going to know a lot about him right away. You're going up against one of the best defenses, in my opinion, in every level. If you look linebackers, secondary, I think Notre Dame's got the best defense in college football. You could certainly make a case for a handful of other programs, but we're going to find out a lot. And he's making that big jump. And there's a lot of curiosity about that. I think Colton Joseph, to me, has an opportunity to make a big name for himself. So I'm not saying it's devastating, but when you look at a player like that and the season that the Monarchs had a year ago, to go 10-3, to win their bowl game, albeit against a South Florida team that was kind of foot out the door a little bit. But I look at this Old Dominion team, and they're more of a wait and see approach for me here.
A lot of that in Group of Six land. Tim Murray's with us here, and they've covered that throughout the offseason. It's worth going back and listening and getting caught up on their VSiN College Football Betting Podcast archive. More content dropping multiple times in some weeks. Other weeks it's one. But just subscribe. That's what I do. That way you don't have to worry about it. Tim, the other side of the JMU question is their week one opener against the Liberty Flames, who are the favorite to win Conference USA at about plus 250, plus 275, which to me is a lot short for where I'm comfortable. But I see an opportunity for the Flames with maybe a little bit more continuity to keep it within a touchdown, which is about where that spread has been settling for much of the time. Don't know how much you've done yourself in terms of week one opportunities, but am I off base in thinking that Liberty, a little more roster continuity, Duke's losing a lot, plus a new coaching staff, there might be a chance for the Flames to keep that open or close?
Yeah, and I think, you're looking at a situation where Liberty coming off of, let's be honest, back-to-back disappointing years. I think 2 years ago, can't imagine many Liberty fans were comfortable with an 8-4 season like they had, and then getting blown out in their bowl game. And then last year, to have kind of things fall apart. So you got Jamie Chadwell in year 4. And I think the question right now that I have about Liberty is what we saw the last 2 years going to be the regular, or was it a blip? And I think there is going to be, some positive regression here for Liberty. And you look at some of the pieces that they brought in, look at the running back position. To go out and get Kanye Udo from Arizona State. He was an absolute monster at Army. So it feels like they kind of, buying low a little bit, if you will, grabbing him after he transferred a year ago out of Army down to Arizona State and wasn't really all that productive. And then, to bring in a Deshaun Purdy at the quarterback position from Charlotte. I mean, I saw, or from Wake Forest, I beg your pardon. I mean, this is a guy that, I think has some juice there. So I'll just say this. On July 21st, if we're talking about gambling, I'm not going to be racing to take 6.5. I think it's a wait and see approach, right? If we can get that to 7, that certainly would be more of an opportunity there. But yeah, I think Liberty, you're onto something there where it's year 4 under Jamie Chadwell. You've got year 1 under Billy Napier, a year removed from the college football playoff. And let's be honest, you're casual better when they start making these bets on September 3rd, September 4th, day of the game. They're going to look at James Madison as a 6.5 point favorite, a team that made the playoff a year ago against a team that went 4-8 in Liberty. And they're going to say, well, that's easy. And that's where I always say, when you look at these numbers, right, whether it be 2.5 or 6.5, there's a reason it's still there, right? It's a reason it's not at 7. It's not at 3, right? The sharp guys would lay it if they wanted to. So I do think you're onto something there. And I think I'm going to tip my cap to you, because I think Liberty is going to be on my short card here of just games to keep an eye out for, because it does feel like a buy low, sell high opportunity for Liberty at James Madison. And you being in the Commonwealth, very familiar with these two teams and the rivalry that they have.
Do you like the Flames to win that conference? Or are you looking further down the leaderboard in terms of a long shot that catches your eye in Conference USA?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Sun Belt isn't a conference that I've dove in too much to look at from a future standpoint. Like you mentioned, Liberty is the favorite at plus 260. It does feel like, in recent years, they were odds-on favorites, even money preseason, because they have had the superior talent. So there is an argument to be made that they're heading into this year with a buy low opportunity. I do think, there's a handful of teams with some decent quarterbacks. Delaware, I know they've got a that is certainly, intriguing there. You look at Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, obviously won the conference a year ago, surprisingly. So I think the conference is open, and I'd have to do a little bit more digging before I, gave a recommendation on a bet. But I do feel like at that price, you don't tend to get Liberty, even though they're still the favorite. You don't tend to get the Flames at that cheap of at that lofty of a price, I should say, all that often.
To the ACC we go with VSiN College Football Betting Podcast host Tim Murray. He's also co-host of VSiN Primetime weeknights on Vegas VSiN, the Sports Information Sports Betting Network. Let me get that right. VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. If I can get my head from being twisted up. The ACC, Virginia Tech. How much of the hype and Kool-Aid are you drinking on James Franklin?
A lot. I think this is a great hire by Virginia Tech. Look, I have enjoyed making fun of James Franklin from time to time because a lot of the time, let's be honest, he deserved it at Penn State. He did not win the big games that they wanted him to win. But going down to Virginia Tech, having this new kind of, I don't want to call it new life, but, just new motivation down there at Virginia Tech, knowing the DMV as well as James Franklin does. It wasn't that long ago. I guess it was long ago, but he was the coach in waiting at Maryland, and that didn't end up going all that well. He goes down to Vanderbilt, and, before Clark Lee was able to do what he's done, James Franklin was looked at as a miracle worker at Vanderbilt. He doesn't need to work miracles at Virginia Tech. There's a buy-in at Virginia Tech. We know how hardcore that fan base is, just craving and salivating for the possibility of 8-9 wins. So am I saying that James Franklin is eventually going to win a national title at Virginia Tech? No, I don't think that'll happen. But do I think Virginia Tech will be a consistent 8-9 win team in the next year or two under James Franklin? Absolutely. Now, let's look at the schedule. It is not a piece of cake, right? You have to go to Clemson. You have to go to SMU. You have to go to Miami. You obviously have the rivalry game to wrap up the season against Virginia. I think the Maryland game is fascinating early on in the season. I assume Virginia Tech fans are notching that up as a win. Maryland fans are probably notching that up as a win. Unfortunately, both teams cannot win in that game. So, look, I think Virginia Tech, coming off of a dreadful season a year ago at 3-9, they're going to be a bowl team. It's just, are they going to win 8 or 9 games and actually contend for this conference, or are they a year or two away? I think they're a year or two away from maybe contending for the conference. But I would say this: I would be surprised if the Hokies aren't in a bowl game and aren't, let's say, pulling off maybe an upset against a Clemson, SMU, or Miami. I think they're going to put a scare into one of the perceived top teams in the ACC.
Out of that grouping, and you could throw the road trip to Cal in that as well for the Hokies, sure. Which one do you believe right now, looking at it, is most likely based on your gut feeling and your studying of the teams that are on Virginia Tech's schedule and your prognostication of them this coming season?
Which team do I think Virginia Tech will have the best chance to beat?
Yes, of that grouping on the road: Cal, SMU, Miami, or Clemson.
I think Clemson certainly is one that I'm not super high on Clemson. You look at their win total sitting at 7.5 this year. So I think this is a Clemson team that's, obviously dealing with some issues, and, we'll see how it plays out. So I think Clemson sitting there on October 24th, Clemson would have come off of a game against an FCS opponent. And then, the SMU game, you look at SMU, this is a team that has won this conference, or has been there on the doorstep, haven't won the conference. But you have SMU off of a bye, and SMU prior to that will have just played Virginia, Cal, and then it went on the road to Syracuse. So I think from a situational standpoint, SMU, they actually might be getting at a decent spot with Virginia Tech coming off a bye week, and SMU, even though it will be in Dallas, they will have gone through a pretty challenging stretch where, you've got Virginia, you got Cal, where, I think there's some anticipation there with JKS, their young quarterback, returning. And then I think Syracuse is going to be an improved team this year. If Steve Angeli can stay healthy, When he went down last year, they became an absolute train wreck of a program. So I think November 7th, if I had to pick one of those games, could be intriguing because I do think you'll more than likely get Virginia Tech as an underdog there. And I think coming off of a bye from a situational standpoint, that November 7th game would jump out to me a little bit there for Virginia Tech to potentially pull off the upset against SMU.
Interesting. SMU, a lot of people's trendy team to face the Miami Hurricanes in the ACC championship, and it doesn't preclude them from doing that if the Hokies were to pull off that upset. You also referenced Clemson. We've asked this question of a lot of guests, and we'll ask it right now of Tim Murray, host of VSiN Primetime weeknights on VSiN, and for our purposes today in the Fast Lane, host of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. And it's worth a subscription to VSiN as well to get the picks and the information and the access to articles that they have. I do that, and it's a lot of good insight and information for those just looking to brush up on their sports knowledge. From the teams in the ACC, we've identified as Carolina, Clemson, and Florida State. Big names, big brands, possibly poised for big disappointment. Are you down on one of those teams more than the other and projecting even more disappointment than many people think?
Yeah, for me, it's Florida State. Going into the season with Ashton Daniels as your starting quarterback, I just is not inspiring whatsoever. Last year you go and get Thomas Castellanos. You've got Gus Malzahn as your offense coordinator a year ago, and you're feeling like, all right, there's some optimism here. And then they go out and they beat Alabama in week 1, and you're thinking, wow, this is going to be a big-time program. I mean, remember, this is a top 10 team a year ago when they lost to Virginia on a Friday night in overtime. So I look at Florida State this year. For those wondering, win total is 6.5 at a number of sports books. I mean, look at their schedule first and foremost. They play, based off of the odds, the 7 top teams in the ACC. They play SMU, Virginia, Louisville on the road, Miami on the road, Clemson, Pitt on the road, NC State on the road. Those 7 teams are the top 7 teams based off of the odds in the ACC. The lone team they get from the bottom portion of the ACC is Boston College, and it's in November in Boston. So who the heck knows what the weather's going to be like? What's the mindset of this Florida State team? I mean, this is a Florida State team that went out to Stanford a year ago and lost to a Stanford team that won, 3 or 4 games. So I just look at Florida State, and, in recent years, they had been top 5 in the portal. This year, I think 247 ranked them at 28th. So they're not bringing in the same talent that they have in the past. They lost a good chunk of talent as well. And I think it's make or break week 1 against SMU. You've got a Monday night game at Doak Campbell. And if you lose that game, then you have a bye week and you're going on the road to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama. So I think there's a potential for this season to unravel fast if Florida State loses that week 1 game to SMU. So Florida State under 6.5 wins is a bet that I have made. And I mean, if Mike Norvell with this schedule gets them to 7 or 8 wins, he deserves a ton of credit. So his feet are definitely to the fire here. You see your fair share of hot seat rankings. He's very high up on them. So for me, of those 3, look, I think North Carolina, let's be honest, they are what they are. It's not a very good program, but they never were to the level of a Florida State or a Clemson. They weren't national championship caliber. Bill Belichick goes in there. People have way too high of expectations. I am not a Billy Edwards guy. I think they're going to have some challenges this year. But for a team that not too long ago was undefeated and winners of the ACC, I think they're destined for a 500 or worse record in 2026.
Tim Murray, Tim Murray on Twitter. That's the number 1. And he's also the host of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Tim, we'd be remiss if we didn't wrap it up on this topic. The Virginia Cavaliers. Great season last year. Are you expecting disappointment this year? And if so, how much?
I wouldn't say disappointment. I mean, obviously they had a phenomenal season a year ago that came up just short of winning a conference championship. So, first and foremost, you got to tip your cap to Tony Elliott in a season where, there was a lot of expectations there. They had not lived up to what they were hoping for Tony Elliott. But to get an 11-win season a year ago, win your bowl game over an SEC team, which, by the way, hilarious to think considering Eli Drinkowitz talking as much whatever he is at SEC Media Days this year, but I digress. there's a lot of curiosity. I mean, Bo Pribula, a guy that, Penn State was very high on. You heard James Franklin talking very glowingly of him at ACC Media Day, and now he comes in to be the starter. Eli Holstein, a guy that, was promising at some point in time at Pitt. So I think at the quarterback position, there's certainly intrigue. You lost Chandler Morris. Chandler Morris was a solid quarterback a year ago. You lose your leading rusher. You lose a lot of talent. Trell Harris, I know, transferred to, what was it? I believe somewhere in the SEC. So you lose a lot of pieces here coming into this season. But yeah, I mean, I think week 0 is pretty intriguing, right? NC State is a team that I think is getting some buzz. Bring back CJ Bailey. Virginia is going to be a home favorite in that one. So I think we'll know a lot about Virginia in the month of September, I guess in August too. So you got NC State out of the jump, and then you got a West Virginia team in Charlotte in the middle of September. And then, then we'll find out what this team's made of. There's no Miami on the schedule, which is always a positive. There's no Louisville on the schedule. I'm a bit bullish on Louisville. I would rank Louisville as the second best team in the conference coming into this year. So I think Virginia, misses out on a couple of the bigger boys, but still does have to go on the road to SMU, which will be a challenge, no doubt. And, you finish up the season at Virginia Tech. So am I anticipating a double-digit win season yet again? No, I am not. But do I think it'll be a massive disappointment of the year for Tony Elliott's squad? No, I think, this is a program where hopefully there's some stability right now, and you're looking at a comfortable bowl season, whether it be 7 or 8 wins. And, who knows, late in the season, if this conference does what it did last year, maybe you have a chance via tie breaks to potentially sneak in to the ACC championship game.
Tim Murray, more than generous enough with his time for us today in the Fast Lane. He is the host of VSiN Primetime weeknights on VSiN, the sports betting network. And for our purposes today in the Fast Lane, host of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. It is worth a subscription during the off season. Go back and check out the archives to get primed up as you prepare for the upcoming season. And of course, worth listening even more when the games get closer, which they are doing right now. One Tim Murray, that's his handle on Twitter. We're at Fastlane Edlane on our socials and wherever you listen to podcasts. Tim, thank you for your time in the Fast Lane. We are grateful for it and really appreciate you hanging out with us today.
Absolutely. Appreciate the time.
Indeed. Tim Murray with us to wrap up the Fast Lane. We told you how to follow it and find it if you missed anything tomorrow in the Fast Lane. Guy who's been on VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast recently, Phil Steele, will hone in on the same conferences, the SEC, the ACC, and the Sun Belt tomorrow in the Fast Lane. So join us starting at 5. Thanks for listening to the Fast Lane on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.
This is SportsCenter.